The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the Sports Guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Another sunny day here in Southern California. In studio today. In my studio. It's not really a studio. One of the creators of Lost, Carlton Cuse, along with his son, who doesn't have headphones on and is just staring at us. This has never happened to me before. I've never done a podcast with an audience.
That's good.
It's a one-man audience.
Exactly.
This is great.
Kind of laugh track over there, okay? You're going to,
Yeah, we'll hear him laughing in the background. He's home from college, and I'm very envious of him. Because, listen, don't get a summer job. Don't listen to him. Your dad's rich. He's one of the creators of Lost. You don't need to get a summer job.
Not true.
Get up at like
Not
12
true.
o'clock every day.
Not true.
Don't work at an ice cream store and in those garbage jobs. All right, so you're going into radio silence soon, as you call it,
Yes.
because the show is going to have its last normal episode on Tuesday, and then a season finale that is now, 5 hours? How long do we stretch it to now?
Well, let's see. It's actually, the entire evening is actually 5 hours because of there's 2 hour retrospective, then there's the 2.5 hour series finale, then there's the local news, then there's Jimmy Kimmel's Aloha Lost special. So,
Which is now starting at like 3:30 in the
I
morning.
think it's from like 3:30 to like 5 in the morning. But which is going to be great, I think. We started actually. We didn't intend for the finale to be 2.5 hours, but we basically, when we wrote the script, our partners at the network in the studio were like, well, we think this is a little long. And we were like, no, we'll edit it in post. And then we shot the thing, and Damon and I were in the editing room, and we were like, well, we can't take any of this stuff out. I mean, in previous years, if there's a storyline you couldn't get to, you just say, well, we'll do it next year. But there was no more next year, so
Yeah.
it was long, and then the network gave us an extra half-hour time, which was great.
That's what I would do if I was a TV show person, because my columns are always too long. So I feel like they would be in a situation like that. They'd be like, "No, it has to be an hour." I'm like, "I'm sorry, it's an hour and a half. It's the best I can do. I can't cut it down."
But the good thing is, on the internet, there is no space constraints. You can kind of write whatever you want.
Also, is anybody going to be mad because Lost was longer than you promised? I don't think anybody's ever mad. Like, I did the same thing with my book, but the book was 700 pages. But nobody's like, "Oh man, all this extra material. I hate this. I hate reading stuff."
And in fact, because of obviously commercials and things like that, it's actually kind of a feature movie length, as opposed to, if it was actually 2 hours, that's, 80 some minutes of program time. It wouldn't have felt full. We just, we didn't feel like it would have felt like it was kind of a complete story. It would have been hard to resolve the entire series in that time space. So it's actually better.
Do you, when you're writing the show, how important are the commercial breaks? Because I usually watch Lost. We'll start it at 9:15, so we could zoom through the commercials and just keep the momentum going. But this week we watched it with the commercials, and they do kind of add to the suspense for in a weird way. Like, oh, going to commercial. Oh, I get 3 minutes.
It's a huge organizing principle in terms of the writing of the show. I mean, when my partner Damon and I and the other writers work on the show, we actually construct the show in this 6-act construct with the commercial breaks as those are act outs or the teaser out. And we talk a lot about what constitutes an act out on Lost, and we will sort of not rest until we kind of come up with a scene at the end of each act that we feel is act out worthy. And that really helps organize the kind of cliffhanger principle of the show, and particularly episode outs. That's a big part of the writing process, is to try to make those sort of engaging on a level that really, lands before you when you finish an episode.
That's what I figured, because it does seem like everything builds to whatever you're trying to build. It's been a controversial season. It seems like people have been so invested in this show, and it's like all or nothing. And I did wonder, like, as you approach this final season, like, everybody's ceiling for what the answers are going to be will never match what you guys can deliver. I'm sure you guys felt that pressure a little bit. Now you're giving all the answers, and then in Tuesday's episode, We finally, I guess I should say spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. I'm sorry for the people overseas and the people serving our fine country. Unfortunately, we're going to have to gear this toward the people who have caught up.
Yeah,
so if you're going to have to just stop listening and come back when you're done with the series. But so Tuesday's episode, we finally find out about the twin brother thing, and
right,
and for some reason it was like a polarizing episode.
Yeah, and it's kind of surprising because it's only really happened twice in the history of the show where we've made an episode that we're really proud of that has actually been polarizing for the audience. The other one was Expose, the Nikki and Paulo episode.
Yep.
Also, very mixed opinions about it. I mean, normally we ourselves know if an episode sucks. I mean, we are the first to acknowledge that the episode Stranger in a Strange Land, where Jack got his tattoos and was flying a kite with Bai Ling, was a subpar episode. But it was kind of a necessary episode at that time because it showed that the show, it illustrated that the series was stalling, and therefore that was a helpful piece in us negotiating an end date for the series. This episode we really liked. We felt it was the kind of companion piece to Ab Eterno earlier in the season, sort of this big mythological download, and it was divisive. But in a sense, I think our answer to that is this is what answers on Lost look like. I mean, I think there is this idea that audience members have in their head that they want answers, but they don't really want answers in the sense that giving answers can be didactic, and in this case, giving you a piece of island history, which we thought was interesting, involves basically having to introduce a bunch of characters who are not series regulars. You only see the sort of regular cast at the very end of the show, and so that's the trade-off. And we felt like we wanted to dispense with that so that the last 3.5 hours of the show could be about the characters and about the resolution of the characters. That's what the show is really about. It's about resolving, what is the fate of these people.
How much did you study the arc and the way the final season's played out for some of the all-time great shows?
We didn't really. I mean, the irony is that, like, if I were to ask you, what can you tell me about the last hour of The Sopranos other than the diner scene? Can you remember anything about that episode?
No.
See? I mean, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, honestly, the only thing that people remember is sort of how it ends. And,
I remember
that last
something.
scene. Yeah.
AJ Soprano had some bad acting. I don't remember the exact what happened, but it was bad. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so I mean, look, it's almost an impossible bar, and people's expectations are so high. But I think it kind of depends on how you approach the show. If you've enjoyed the journey, if you kind of roll with the show, if you're not sitting there with a checklist of little questions that you hope are getting resolved, I think you will like the ending of Lost. If you really are searching for these very specific questions to be answered, you probably will be frustrated at the end of the show.
What's interesting is it's a show about faith, in my opinion. Yeah. But it's for the viewers, it's also about the faith. And you kind of, I think we all reached a point with the show where you had to at some point just trust the process and enjoy what was happening. And I know for me at the beginning of this season, I was getting really frustrated because I don't like the sideways reality, and I'm not a big fan of, like, I hated when the Sopranos used to do the Tony dream sequence.
Oh, when Tony went into the coma and got shot, and
it just seems like once you go into that world, you can basically do anything you want. And it took me a couple episodes to be like,
so you're not going to be first in line to see Inception this summer?
No,
okay.
No, I'm not going to. I don't like dream sequences. But it took me a couple episodes to be like, you know what? I'm going to trust these guys. I had a good 5-year run with these guys. And I'm going to trust that they know what they're doing to some degree. And hopefully this will work out. And I feel like it's working out.
Well, cool. I'm happy to hear that from you. I mean, look, the thing that's sort of always been our operating principle is that, we're going to try to be bold. And, we stand by our choices. So if being bold and doing an episode set, in some, unnamed time BC last week with none of the regular actors, that's kind of a bold move with 4 hours left in the show.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't work for everybody, but it was certainly not the safe choice. And
but don't some people just like to complain? I mean, isn't that part of the internet? And aren't the people that are on the internet complaining about the show probably predisposed to complain about stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, like if you're happy, you're much less likely to go on the internet and basically write a comment. I mean, so there's the people who are unhappy. There's kind of a vociferous minority that I think is...
Yeah, I call it the loud minority.
The loud minority. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's hard to break down exactly, how many people like something or don't like something, but those people make a lot of noise. And in a certain way, it kind of can distort your view of how the show is actually landing. And the weird thing about Lost is it's a lot like sports. I mean, people, it's like, I sort of feel after last week, like, one of the early like Oklahoma games where people were like, oh, the Lakers suck. It's like this is, we kind of get the gladiatorial thumbs up or thumbs down after every episode, but it's not sports, there is a predetermined outcome. The show is written, it's going to finish, and we're not in conflict with an opposition with an opponent every time we air an episode.
It seems like in this current era, a creator can go one of two ways with this show. Either you go the way David Chase did, which is to really stay back and be mysterious about it, and not only not explain the things that you were trying to do, but kind of get mad that people even want an explanation. They leave some mystery. And then, the way you guys have handled things, you've been very interactive on the internet. You do a podcast.
Yeah.
You give a lot, you've given a lot of interviews about this show over the years. If you had to do it over again, would you play it that way?
Absolutely, because I think that the fan audience is, is a huge part of Lost. I mean, I think the sort of interactive quality of the show is in some ways what defines Lost. And I think when people look back on it, that will be one of the things that people remember Lost for. It was sort of the first show in which the fans were sort of an organic part of the show as a whole. And that was made possible by the internet. And all these fan communities have sort of sprouted up around the show. So, we sort of felt like that was such an essential part of the show. We wanted to be a part of that and contribute to that and connect with our fans. And, that the show was kind of meant to be discussed. I mean, we actually write a lot of things. We write with sort of intentional ambiguity so that people can actually debate and discuss what things mean in the show. And so that, it felt like us being a part of the community was important.
Yeah, you're appealing to the guys that I hated in college. The English majors who read 45 things and everything. And, oh, did you see he was holding that book in scene 5 and that means this, and it could also mean this. I was always a nuts and bolts guy. Hey, how about this? What if it just meant this? Exactly.
It always means that. It's funny because I was in college. I remember going to see George Cukor, the director, sort of famous Philadelphia Story and all these, sort of famous big MGM pictures. And he was giving a talk, and at the end there was questions, and basically some student who was, in the category of English majors you discussed got up and started talking about how there was a piano in all these key scenes in all of Cukor's movies, and started analyzing what the piano was at these turning points. And so he finally says, and what's the significance of the piano? And Cukor sort of stared at him imperiously and said, it's an effing piano. And I thought that was great. So
yeah, it was after the final Sopranos, they had that guy, it was like a 20,000 word post on the last scene compared to the Last Supper.
Oh my
God.
God.
The images, and I just imagine, first of all, I don't think anybody is that good of a writer.
No, I mean,
to be able to somehow use the Last Supper as the last scene of your TV show that well with that many things. But I just imagine David Chase reading that being like, it's kind of cool. I'm glad that guy saw those things. I didn't mean any of them, but congratulations.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people, I think, ascribe a lot more sort of forethought in, sort of literary terms to what we do. I mean, we set out to make an entertaining show. We want their twists and turns, and we try to make it engaging and unexpected, but we're not, in no way are we sitting there sort of having sort of intellectually pretentious conversations about how we're constructing the narrative of the show.
But at the same time, you milk it a little bit. You'll have some guy reading a book or some sort of something and some weird name that people will instantly go on the internet and Google and try to figure out.
Well, I think for Damon and me, that's kind of like, it's like a mashup. It's like a mix. It's like a remix,
Yeah.
It's like, those are things that we read or we watched that influenced us. So we basically put them in there and say, oh, hey, you know what? We read this philosopher in college, or we love the Star Wars movies, or hey, I'm a big fan of Walker Percy, or, Damon will say, hey, I love this book by Stephen King, and all these things. So we put them in there so that you as an audience can say, okay, those were the things that inspired us, that sort of shaped us as writers, and now you can see what they are. But they're not, you're not supposed to literally say, okay, well, Desmond David Hume is actually operating on the exact same principles as Hume the philosopher.
How did you get hooked up with Damon?
I created a show called Nash Bridges with Don Johnson and Cheech Marin.
One of my heroes, Don Johnson.
There you go.
Sonny Crockett.
Sonny Crockett, exactly. So I created that show, and in the 6th year of that show, I gave a sort of a brand new writer named Damon Lindelof his first job on a television series. And so he worked as a sort of a baby writer on Nash Bridges, and we became friends, and we would see each other every few months. And then basically this guy, Lloyd Braun at ABC, came up with the idea for Lost. He wanted to do sort of a scripted version of Survivor, and then he went to J.J. Abrams. And
well, hold on, though. Lloyd Braun just said, let's put Castaway on an island with a plane crash.
Yeah, I mean, that was basically it.
I think he gets a little too much credit for this, because I think executives throw ideas out all the time.
Yeah,
I know you can't say that, but I'm just saying. He came up with one idea, and to me, you guys took it and ran with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I think in television series, the premise is much less important than the execution of the premise. And I think networks get really hung up on ideas for shows. But if you look at really a lot of the great shows, the ideas themselves are either kind of non-existent or suspect. It's really the way in which they're executed. Obviously, most famously, Seinfeld was about nothing, but that was the genius of it. Or if you look at Friends, I mean, how mundane a premise is that? And yet it was all in the casting, the chemistry, and the execution of the show. So, anyway, so JJ was too busy. He enlisted through an executive named Heather Caden. He got matched up with Damon. They had a great meeting. They ended up, that was enough of a spark for them to write the pilot together, and then JJ directed the pilot, and then JJ was leaving to go do Mission Impossible 3 with Tom Cruise, and Damon wasn't an experienced showrunner, and basically I was giving him advice sort of on the side, and he was like, is there any way you could come in and do this? And I had seen the pilot and fell in love with it, and it really, sparked my imagination. I was like, oh my God, this is really special. And just every sort of creative synapse in my brain was firing. I was like, oh, I really think that we could do something cool with this. And so I got out of this deal I had with another studio, came over, and so right in that sort of first batch of episodes, joined the show, and then, Damon and I have co-run the show and kind of took that pilot and turned it into what became the series.
Is it true? Because I've always heard the story that everything came together pretty fast with that pilot. Like, I don't think it wasn't one of those things where they were making it for a year and a half, right?
No, they did the whole thing in like 11 weeks. And that's, it's like Lost is this miracle that it even exists. And one of the reasons is because it was just in 11 weeks, that there wasn't time for it to be notes to death, for, the network to get concerned or sand off the rough edges and say, do we really want to have a polar bear or a monster?
You got to get rid of the
Koreans?
Woods?
Yeah.
No, we can't do that. The focus groups hated the Koreans.
Yeah, so there wasn't time to overanalyze or overjudge the material. It just got made, and that was great. And that, I think the fact that it was sort of it was just birthed so quickly was a big contributor to its success.
Would you say that the first year or so you were flying by the seat of your pants a little bit with where the plot was going?
Absolutely.
I always got that feeling. Because now it's like, I think people say, oh, they knew all along. And it's like, I don't really think they knew all along. I think they had some ideas, but I think at some point in season 2, season 3, or whatever, didn't you have to say, all right, how do we tie everything that's about to happen with what happened in season 1? Is that fair?
Yeah, pretty fair. I mean, look, the great thing was that nobody really actually thought the show was going to work. So, I think to be successful creatively in any endeavor, you have to risk failure. And in fact, in this case, failure was actually an attractive option because we thought, we've got an order of 12 episodes, and we're going to try to make the coolest 12 episodes of television we can. And if it flops and if it's canceled, it'll be like Twin Peaks or The Prisoner. It'll be a really cool DVD people will pass around. Hey, did you ever see Lost? And so it actually was attractive to us. The notion of failure was attractive to us. And so we made the show, and then the pilot came, then the pilot aired, and this is like in television, if you're a producer, like having huge ratings is like a winning lottery ticket, and I remember Damon coming into my office like the day the ratings were massive, and he was like, oh my God, does this mean we have to still keep doing this? And yes. And so at that point it was like, oh, well, let's see what happens. And then the next 2 weeks, the ratings were good too. And then we realized it was going to be a lot more than 12 episodes. And then we sort of figured out enough to get us through the first season. But it's like when you're making a television season and the show in the first season, it's like you're like putting out a fire, like your house is on fire and you have a cup of water and you can only refill the cup, a cup at a time to actually put the fire out. And so we we had some general notions, but it was only between the first and the second season when we had some downtime that we were able to start really plotting out the mythology. But of course, at that point, we didn't know if the show was going to go 2 seasons or 9 seasons. So you have this mythology, but you don't know how long the road trip is going to be. And it wasn't really until the 3rd season when we were able to negotiate the end date that we were able to say, okay, we have this much remaining mythology. We were able to plan out seasons 4, 5, and 6, and then the construct became much more organized. But some of those basic ideas from, in fact, the final image of the show that we talked about way back in season 1 still is the final image of the whole series. So certain elements like that actually have held over the entire time.
So if you were making like a director's cut DVD, like how many hours of this show have you done now?
When all said and done, it'll be 121 and a half hours.
121 and a half hours. So let's say they tell you can make a director's cut of everything you guys just did and trim all the fat, like make it like a steak. Trim out all the stuff you wish you hadn't done in season 1, season 2, tighten up some plots, get rid of maybe some characters that didn't have anything to do with the big end game. How many hours is that steak?
Man, I don't, that's a good question. I mean, on sort of a more meta level, I would say all of it was necessary in order to making it all was necessary in order to learn. By the way,
I agree with that. Yeah, I'm all for the steak with the fat. I'm wondering, like, if you boiled it down.
I would say that probably, like any show, you could throw out 20% or 25%.
Yeah.
It's like if you make 100 hours of a show, you've got to figure that, like, a third of them are going to be kind of crappy and a third of them are going to be good and like a third are going to be in the middle. And so you could take the lower third episodes and say, well, those aren't so good. Although, it would be complicated to do on Lost because the narrative is so intertwined. You couldn't just say, there are very few episodes you could chuck out, completely because there's plot. Even in bad episodes, there's things that advance the overall narrative.
Because in retrospect, we probably could have plowed through season 2 faster.
Well, seasons 2 and seasons 3 were stalling because we didn't know how long the show had to go. So we were kind of...
So you're stringing it along a little.
We're kind of rolling through. I mean, it was funny because, sometimes you don't even understand your metaphors as a writer until you kind of look back on them. And so sometime towards the end of season 3, we sort of had this revelation. Oh my God, at the beginning of season 3 when our characters were locked in cages, that was because, Damon and I felt like we were locked in cages. We were like, because we were prisoners of our own show. We didn't know how long it had to last. And it wasn't really until we negotiated an end date, then we were able to deploy the flash forward at the end of season 3. And that was really putting the pedal back down to the metal.
What season did you think of the flash forward, and when did you know that's where that was going?
All of that construct kind of came up in, we started talking about those things between the first and the second season, and then during this, there was kind of an evolving process, and, it's the question we get asked the most, which is, did you make it up as you were going along? Did you have it planned? And the answer is kind of a combination of all those things.
Yeah.
You have a certain architecture, and then as you go forward, you learn more and more, and you fill in. And at the beginning of each season, we would have like this, what we affectionately refer to as a mini camp, like spring football, and we would basically sit down when we were sort of unfettered by having to write the next week's script and basically spend a month with the writers working out the next season in great detail. And that architecture for those seasons really would hold. But we sort of knew the general construct of that season. Then at the beginning, then we'd have mini camp, and that would fill in a lot of details. And then we'd write each episode by episode, but leaving ourselves a fair amount of latitude because the show is kind of an organic thing. It kind of tells you what it wants, and you put people together. Like, for instance, Sawyer and Juliet, like no one expected that to work. The actors were very dubious of it, and we ourselves weren't sure if it was going to work, but we were like, let's try this. There's some real benefits in doing this. And lo and behold, there was this kind of chemistry between them that wasn't a sort of sexual chemistry. It was sort of a deeper, more romantic, we're a married couple kind of old school chemistry that, I think Josh Holloway and Elizabeth Mitchell and Damon and me were all like, wow, that actually is better than we ever expected. And that kind of really informed that relationship. You can't be too didactic as a writer and just try to impose your will on a television show. If you're J.K. Rowling, you're completely in control of your universe. But as a television producer and writer, you're working in collaboration. In the case of Lost, with 425 people worked on this show. And you have all these actors and directors and fellow writers, and all of them you have to kind of meld together and find a path that really sort of feels right for the show. And the show kind of tells you what it wants to be.
That was one of my greatest moments as a watcher of TV or movies was in the Flash Forward episode. I caught on pretty quickly.
You did? Before the end?
I'm one of those guys who never, ever figures stuff out.
You look at Jack's cell phone? Is that what it did for you?
I don't know what it was, but I was like, you know what? Something's fishy. And then, like, about 20 minutes in, I said to my wife, it's a Flash Forward. I think we're going forward. She's like, no. I'm like,
really?
No, you watch. But I'm the same guy who, The Usual Suspects, the guy was not even walking with the limp anymore, and I'm like, what's happening? Why doesn't he have the limp? So I was very excited about that. It was the one time. But to me, that's the greatest moment in the history of the episode. And I think one of the best TV moments ever, at least for me, like just, they're off the island. I just remember that show ending and just, I didn't even know what to do with myself. I almost had to take a walk. You created this show. I didn't create the show, but you've what's the right word?
I've been the showrunner.
You've parented it.
I parented the show, yes.
With Damon. What's
yes.
it like to work with another person all the time as a writer? Because I can't imagine ever doing that.
Really? It's actually awesome. I mean, we have a fantastic partnership, and the work volume is so massive. I mean, if you think about, we basically make this year we'll have made 18 little movies. I mean, the amount of work that goes into these things, it's almost too much for one person, and it's really great to have someone to, bounce ideas off of. And I think that we have a very sort of synergistic skill set, kind of overlap, and we kind of are always challenging each other to make the show better. And I think that process has contributed enormously to the success of the show. We have breakfast in my office every morning, and we talk about the show, and we always sort of operate on the principle that if both of us think an idea is cool, then it goes into the show. And, that we did that right up through the finale. And a lot of those conversations, one of the other of us will have an idea and the other person will be like, meh. And that actually kind of leads to discussion and evolution, and the idea gets better and better. And I think that process of kind of continuing to push for better ideas, and when we work on the scripts, we work on them with the other writers. There are 9 writers on the show, and we break it in the room, we break the story in the room, we work out all the details, there's a draft written, we notes it, we rewrite it, and then we'll rewrite it again and again, and we keep challenging each other to make it better. And I think that was sort of completely, essential part of the creative process.
So now you guys are like a married couple.
We're more than a married couple. I mean, we've spent more time with each other over the last 6 years than we have with our wives. So it's going to be a little strange come a week from Sunday.
Is it sad, or do you do something else? Like, how do you leave this? It's kind of weird, right?
It's a little weird, yeah. I mean, look, I hope and assume, and, we plan to do something else together down the road, but I think we're going to, I think we both need to kind of go our separate ways a little bit here, and, we're going to each kind of go off to undisclosed locations after the finale is aired, and we're going to kind of work on some of our own stuff a little bit, and we'll probably get back together and do something else down the road. But Lost will always be singular. I mean, it's such a kind of a rare and special, opportunity that, a show like this, I mean, whatever your intentions are, you can't manufacture it. You can do what you can, but then it sort of has to happen.
And then let's fast forward to about 15 months from now, when your studio says 9 figures each, Lost movie. Here's a suitcase of cash. And your son says, cool, I'm going to drop out of school. This is great. I don't need to graduate anymore. This is awesome. There might be a Lost movie, right? You can't rule that out.
I mean,
or I haven't seen the season finale yet, so maybe you could rule it out. But
we basically did not put a single iota of sort of setup in the finale for a movie or a sequel or a spinoff. I mean, we really wanted to end our story definitively, and that was the finale represents our best effort to do that. But of course, in the Terminator movies, those guys got burned up in molten metal, and they still were able to make 2 more movies and a TV show. So the franchise is incredibly valuable to the Walt Disney Company. I mean, I can't imagine that at some point somebody's going to do something with Lost, and it's not ours, it's theirs, it's their franchise. So I can't imagine that at some point there will not be some other stories that get told on the island. But
Lost,
but whether
prequel.
Yeah, I mean, we have at this point we have no intention of doing anything. We've told our story.
Yeah. I feel the same way, but I wouldn't be surprised if 2 years from now you guys were talking yourself into. How did you, the thing that amazes me about this show is how many times you nailed the casting. Because with, just on down the line, and this is really from the, the pilot and then the people you added, it almost seemed like you saw people on other shows and just pulled them into your shows for the most part. Is that what happened?
We approached
like somebody who was like, for instance, the guy in The Sopranos who was with Uncle Junior.
Yeah.
I read a story about you guys saw that episode and you're like, we got to figure out how to get him on the show. How often did that happen?
Pretty much all the time. I mean, we approach casting a little bit sort of backwards. I mean, we'd sort of say, okay, here's an idea for a character that we want to have on the show, and then we would basically talk about, but sort of a loose idea for a character. Then we would basically talk about actors that we liked who might be right for that part. So we knew that we had, for instance, we were going to introduce the leader of the others, and
that's all you knew.
That's all we knew. I mean, and then we started talking about who would be interesting actors who could be the leader of the others, and and both Damon and I remember Michael Emerson from the Practice, where he won an Emmy as this sort of really cool serial killer. And so we were like, oh my God, what about Michael Emerson? And so we call up Michael Emerson. He's walking on the slushy streets of New York, and we were like, hey, would you like to come down to Hawaii and do 3 episodes of Lost? And he was like, absolutely. And then
didn't his wife watch the show? Thought there was some, like, he already had been like following it.
Yeah, I don't think Michael himself was particularly dialed in. He was doing theater in New York.
Though,
but I think Carrie, his wife, who's on she's on,
I can't remember her name.
True Blood. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's right. And so he came down, and then once we sort of had Michael, we then tailored the suit to fit Michael. I mean, we wrote the part to kind of fit the type of person that he was, and then once he got down to Hawaii, I mean, he just so nailed it. I mean, it was such an important part. We had sort of an escape plan. So if you remember at the beginning of that storyline, they capture this other, and they sort of hold him as a prisoner of war in the hatch. And basically, we thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if that guy was the leader of the others? They let go of the guy who was the leader of the other people on the island. But if the actor we cast wasn't great, we would have basically had him just be like another other. But the moment Emerson said, got any milk, we were like, oh my God, this guy is it. It's, he's a home run. And so then he went from doing 3 episodes that year to doing 8 episodes that year. And then at the same time, we'd had this actor, Adewale Akinnuwe-Abaje, who was Mr. Echo, same sort of thing. We wanted this Nigerian priest character, and then we were, we had seen him on Oz.
Adebisi, one of the great characters of all time.
We're like, oh my God, wouldn't it be awesome to have him? And then once we realized we could get Adewale, then it was like, well, he can't really be a priest. He has to be a warlord who is pretending to be a priest, because that was sort of, that fit who he was as a character. It was a better, and that all of a sudden was like, oh, that was an evolution of an idea, and that was like a better version of it. We could still give him the characteristics of a priest, which we wanted, but it was more reflective of who Adewale was as a person. He had this sort of dark, tumultuous kind of quality. Well, he gets down to Hawaii, and he hated being there. He did not want to be in Hawaii, and he was like, I want off the show. So again, you don't make a television show in a vacuum. So we basically killed him off prematurely, but by killing, Echo off prematurely, that gave us space to write more for Michael Emerson and for Ben to become a bigger presence. So, that's what I'm talking about how you have to kind of approach the show organically. Both those ideas were, so one sort of branch, the Echo branch, had to be pruned, but that sort of let the other branch, which was the, Ben branch, really blossom.
Was that the biggest what if for the show? What if he had liked Hawaii?
It's too bad, because we had great plans for Mr. Echo, and we thought
he was a great character.
This idea of a guy who had this dark past but a really strong spiritual essence was really cool, and we, especially putting him in opposition with someone like Locke. I mean, we felt like that really could have blossomed into, there could have been all sorts of really interesting character explorations that would have grown out of that character, but that's the reality of what happens when you make television sometimes. And so that didn't work out, but it allowed other things to become really, really cool on the show.
Did you think about recasting it?
No. I mean,
The two
Lost
Darrens?
is not a show to do a two Darrens on. Exactly. You beat me to the punch on that. That's exactly right.
I have another question. How does anybody not like Hawaii? That's an incredible thing for anybody to say. Like, this place it's too nice here.
I know. Well, I mean,
too great.
He, Adewale was from London. He had his, group of friends and family and stuff there, and I think it was just way too far afield. I mean, It's remote. I mean, you really do have to adjust your perspective when you spend a lot of time in Hawaii. I mean, it's a beautiful and fantastic place, but you have to embrace it. And I think particularly, if you're someone who's like enjoys the sort of high life of living in Los Angeles or New York, that's not what you're going to get in Honolulu. So, or, on the east side of the island where, Lanikai or wherever the actors all live. I mean, it's quiet and there's this sort of, it's beautiful. It's fantastic. I mean,
were they all hanging out when the show wasn't taping all that, or did the little cliques develop? Like, how did that whole thing work?
In the first year of the show, they would have screenings at each other's houses every Wednesday night when the show was on Wednesday night. And like if it was a Kate episode, then Evangeline would have everyone over to her house. Or if it was a Jack episode, Matthew would have everybody over to her house. But the normal course of things on a television series, as in life, is that you kind of ultimately, you go from sort of the big collective into sort of smaller groups of friends. And I think they all sort of broke into sort of kind of smaller clusters of friendships, but they all really got along, and I think that the end date was enormously helpful. In television, a lot of times actors are sort of looking down the barrel of a 7-year contract. They don't know if the show's going to go. They can feel sort of trapped in sort of almost what feels like an open-ended commitment in that.
Well, and then also you have the I want to leave before the show jumps the shark part.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to get out, almost jump off the ship in time.
But, I mean, this was so different than that. As a matter of fact, one of the most kind of vivid and emotional memories was just being in Hawaii a couple of weeks ago when we were shooting a scene. We were kind of shooting all night, and a number of the actors, it was their last day of working on Lost ever, and pretty much the entire cast showed up, and they were all sort of sitting in this big, circle, and Terry O'Quinn and Naveen both are wonderful musicians, and they were playing guitar, and the actors were taking turns singing songs, and it was so unbelievably emotional and beautiful, and they were all just there hanging out with each other because they sort of recognized, well, this is the end, it's over, and this is the last time we're all going to be with each other.
Do you think that, Lost is going to follow these guys to some degree? Because I think, I see somebody like Naveen Andrews, who plays Saeed, and in anything I see him from now on, I'm going to think he's Saeed. It's almost like a detriment to his career in a weird way. I'd actually like to turn this around to you and basically sort of, okay, so if you're going through the cast, I would love your predictions of who do you think will be able to sort of transcend their role on Lost and who do you think will actually suffer more from the association with the show? I like how you turn the tables on me. Nobody ever does that in a podcast.
Matthew
Fox has played two guys though. He's had two big characters because he was also in Party of Five, which was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I love Party of Five. I'll never forget when Bailey started drinking. It was traumatic for all of us. Then he got cancer and the show fell apart. But I think he's now been established in two different shows, so I think he could. The guy I think has the biggest upside is Sawyer, Josh Holloway,
right?
Because I don't know. I think that character is a pretty defined character, but I could see him doing things beyond that character, and I do think he has leading man appeal. And when you think how many under 40, he's under 40, right? Or is he probably right around?
He's right around 40.
Yeah. Not a lot of guys in that class of guys who could lead a movie and whatever. I think I'm more worried about like Terry O'Quinn, the guy who plays Saeed, Naveen Andrews.
Right.
Kate will be interesting. Does she want to act? I heard she maybe wanted to get out of the whole thing.
No, I think she's going to still keep acting.
Because I love her.
Yeah.
I see her like in a sitcom, like a Julia Louis-Dreyfus type. Like just total, not even expecting. Ben, Michael Emerson, I think will always be able to do like those 4-episode arcs where he wins an Emmy for doing, he's a serial killer, all those type of things.
Yeah.
Other than that, it'll be interesting.
Emily, Claire, she's a wonderful actor.
I'd like to see her in an erotic thriller, maybe. Maybe an attorney who gets involved with the wrong suspect, something like that. The Daniel Day Kim, is that his name? He already got a job.
Yeah, he's actually the one cast member who's already actually taken another job. So he's in the new incarnation of Hawaii Five-0.
But the lead of that is Dermot Mulroney.
I think the lead is Alex O'Loughlin, and then I think Scott Kahn, and then I think Daniel's like the third.
Oh,
lead.
yeah. No, I was okay with that remake. It was the Rockford Files. Dermot Mulroney as James Garner. I wasn't buying. You can't comment on that. 'Cause you're in the industry.
All I can say is that, that sort of is a sacrosanct show for me. I mean, the Rockford Files is one of my favorite television shows. So it's like, Garner. That's one way I have a hard time going, gee, why remake that one? I mean, it's just, I think it was so specific. I'm not sure the premise is, I don't know. I just love that show so much.
Didn't your show kind of prove that almost like you think like in a sports way with the salary cap? We need to gotta get the 3 big stars. And maybe in the NBA, that's the only way you can win. But in baseball, sometimes the people who don't overpay for certain whatevers. This was almost like a salary cap Oklahoma City in basketball type of show. They didn't really splurge for any big stars to make this. I mean, the big splurge was the plane crash. Wasn't that the most expensive scene in television history?
Yeah, I mean, they actually bought an L-1011, cut it into pieces, freighted it to Hawaii, and put it on the beach, which freaked out a lot of the tourists that were just driving like, let's take a drive around the island of Oahu. What? There's like a freaking L-1011 on the beach in pieces, So, they had put up some signs, this is a movie.
It's an amazing scene. I think it's one of the great scenes in the history of network television it's a movie scene. It's not a television scene.
Well, I mean,
and I don't think it would happen now in the post-strike 2010. I don't know if they spend that kind of money in a scene like that.
No, I mean, there's really under maybe rare circumstance if it's somebody like JJ who did not allow the sort of the supposed constraints of television to overrule his imagination and like he said, I want to get a plane and put it on the beach and shoot the scene, and it was amazing. And but when we were finishing the show, I felt a little bit like, God, I'm a blacksmith in the internet era. This is this huge show with 2 full-time crews, shot on Panavision 35mm film, on location in Hawaii, 425 people working on it. I mean, the business does not support capitalizing television shows on this sort of budget and scale anymore. So, it's sad because you won't see shows like Lost anymore because it's hard for any company to financially support them at that level.
Yeah, and I don't think people realize that. And I think they will 3 years from now.
Yeah.
But I don't think people realize, when your show ends, this is pretty much the end of an era, at least the era as we know it. Now I think it's going to splinter into what we've seen with AMC and Mad Men.
Right.
And these networks throwing all their money into one show, and maybe that's it. I think the cable networks are going to step up, but the old days of the basic big network type of TV show, I don't think that. I think that's gone.
I agree. I mean, they'll take a few shots, but
they won't be shots like flying an airplane to Hawaii, cutting it up in pieces and putting it on the beach. That's not happening anymore.
No, I don't think it is. It's
kind of sad.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's like if you're pitching a show, you'd want to get basically one lead actor and have him drive around in a car solving crimes, like Nash Bridges. So you're back to the Nash Bridges era.
Exactly. I mean, that's it. I mean, what really is thriving is sort of niche shows where you do something like Breaking Bad, where you make a really good show, but it's got a small fervent audience, and it is it can be produced on a reasonable budget.
Yeah. As we're winding to a close here with so this is taping on a Friday. We got an episode on Tuesday. So many 3.5 hours left.
That's right. Exactly.
I mean, are you nervous about how you feeling? Anxious? Just excited for everybody to see it?
I'm actually excited for everybody to see it. I mean, we made the finale that we wanted to make, and we are, it's funny, there was this DVD feature that one of the things that's going to be on, it was about sort of the anatomy of how you end a series, and the DVD people interviewed all these other people that had created television shows, and one of them was Stephen Cannell, and he made some comment like he had created 42 shows for network television and not ended any of them on his own terms.
Wow.
So, it's the sort of level of gratitude we have for being able to tell our story is immense. And, we made the finale we wanted to make it. We like it. Damon and I like it. The the writers all like it, the actors who are in it like it, and that's all we, and the people we've been working with, the editors, the sound people, the network executives who've seen it all are positive about it, and that's all we can do is we made the version of the finale that we wanted to make, and we can't control how people are going to respond to it. All we could do was sort of make our best version of the show, and so I'm excited about it. I mean, I like it, and I feel like if our own internal sort of barometer about an episode has been correct, that people, if they've liked the other episodes that we've done, that they'll like it too.
Pet peeve of mine. Does it make you mad that people, not only just the viewers, but with awards and stuff like the Emmys, people don't realize how much harder it is to make a network drama versus if you guys were on cable and you could swear and you could show Kate's nipple every once in a while. You could throw in an F-bomb and the violence would be more violent and be some real violence. Like that's a major obstacle.
Yeah, and apart from the things you mentioned, there also are, you get more time per episode. The Sopranos was like a full hour.
Commercial breaks.
No commercial breaks. Also, they would produce like 12 episodes a season, so you're
doing twice as many.
Twice as many episodes. You have that much more time to actually work on each episode. I mean, there are all those advantages that cable shows have. But, that being said, we have the support of, I don't know. The show is kind of what it is. It wouldn't have been the same on cable, so it's hard to say. Do I wish we were on cable? No, because the act breaks, the kind of cliffhanger structure was so.
Yeah, but at the same time, now, how many Emmys did you win?
We won one so far.
For best drama.
For best drama, yeah. Well, we won an Emmy for interactive media, like a special, category for some of the sort of internet stuff we did.
All right, but you only won one best drama.
Correct. Yeah.
If the categories were the way they should be,
yeah,
where you have best cable drama and best network drama, you win 4 or 5, and possibly 6.
It is. Obviously, you just look at the landscape of shows that get nominated. There basically is, Lost and House are the two network entries that seem to make it. All the other shows are coming from cable now, and so
and your actors win Emmys too, and you've had a couple. Who won Emmys?
Michael Emerson and Terry O'Quinn have won, Best Supporting Actor Emmys.
Yeah. I don't think that's fair, and it really bothers me. I'm big on awards.
Thank you, Bill.
Well, I'm big on awards. It's the same thing like it bothered me LeBron James didn't win the unanimous MVP. I know now that looks pretty smart now that he's out of the playoffs, but
sports. I thought we were actually going to talk. There was like this podcast is now like it's a 99% lost wedge and a 1% sports wedge.
Well, the reason we started emailing each other was because I tweeted something about I was on the edge with this alternate universe thing because we were back in 2000. Actually, what year were we with the alternate? We didn't know at the time.
Correct.
And I was like, if these guys take away the 2004 Red Sox World Series, I'm killing everybody. I'm not just killing them. I'm just killing everybody in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and I tweeted back. Don't worry. Yeah. Yes, you're the that is sacrosanct. Having grown up in Boston, there was no way that I was going to take away the.
Yeah, but there's two types of Boston fans out here. There's the type who are the real Boston fans. Then there are the type that grew up around there, move out here, then they wear Red Sox caps and pretend they're Boston fans, but they're actually not. And that type would have been like, oh, it'll be fun. Everyone back home will think it'll be funny if I take away the World Series because they wouldn't have known any better. Yeah. So I was nervous.
And it's also hard because, my partner Damon is a Yankees fan. So, this is.
He brought it up, didn't
he? He really did. He wasn't happy about we try to avoid talking about baseball because it can get very tense. By the way, I would say on a sports level, my greatest moment of pride might be the fact that I think I have got the best hit off C.J. Wilson of anybody in this year. We did these little lost slap down things, these little 3-minute funny videos. You can find them on the internet.
Yeah.
We just did some with the Muppets, but we also did 3. C.J. Wilson of the Texas Rangers is a huge Lost fan, and so we did these. We played like wiffle ball with him, and and if we got a hit, we got to ask him baseball questions, and if he basically threw the ball by us, then he got to ask us Lost questions, and I just tagged the ball off of him, and apparently I'm the only one. I mean, that guy's he's number 2 in the. This is a great story, by the way. These two guys who were relievers, basically him and Phil Hughes, come out of the bullpens out of their respective clubs, and they're 1-2 in the AL and ERA.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
When what season was it when you dropped the 2004 Red Sox won the title bomb? I forget what the context was. I'm not one of the Lost fans that knows everything that happened. I've seen every minute of every Lost show, but I don't go back and I can't be like, oh, that was episode 39, blah, blah, blah.
I also do not have a photographic memory for
Jack,
that stuff.
Right?
So yeah, it was Jack who basically was talking about it. But
you guys showed it a couple episodes earlier. You said something like, wow, that's like the Red Sox winning the World Series, or like something like, oh, that'll never happen.
Exactly.
I love that because Lost started before the Red Sox won the World Series.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, the show started in September 2004, so. Yeah, so
that was
good.
Cool. It was the best use of the Red Sox 2004 World Series title that I can remember. The worst, of course, being Fever Pitch. Sorry, Farrelly Brothers. I think even they would admit that was bad.
Yeah.
All right. What else? Did we cover everything?
I think we covered everything.
I'm trying to think.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I just wanted to ask you kind of what was your reaction to last night's New York Knicks chanting? Are you kind of pleased that the Twitter thing, the Twitter news worked out?
It kind of worked. I got to say, it gained momentum as it went along. And I know from people that were at the game that were friends, like people were like checking the things and stuff. So it is kind of, social media is going into a weird place. Are
you kind of feeling today the sort of sense that with great power comes great responsibility?
Yes.
That you can mobilize your Twitter army to kind of do whatever you want. I mean, it's actually kind of it's kind of frightening amount of power you have.
I feel frightened by it, and I actually feel bad because I feel bad for Cleveland today. I have they've been kicked so many times that now I feel like I have some responsibility in their pain, which makes me feel bad. And then also I worry that this will now lead to copycat. I hope that 3 years from now I'm not like the Dr. Oppenheimer of this whole thing, and people are pointing at me. I remembered what I was going to ask. I knew I had one last question. What was your favorite episode ever?
My favorite episode ever is The Constant, probably, which is the one with Penny and Desmond, where he's consciousness traveling, and then basically he ends up having this very kind of intense conversation when Penny's on the freighter, and that episode was it took us like 5 weeks to break this episode. Normally it takes about 2 weeks to put an episode together. It was really complicated, and it was sort of really, it's the episode that kind of really brought this whole idea of kind of time travel and consciousness traveling sort of to the front in the show. It was kind of a big step forward in us declaring the sort of genre kind of roots of the show. But it was an episode that also had this really strong emotional kind of core with Penny and Desmond, and I think that that's always been our goal, which is, you can do genre stuff and that's cool, but it has to be rooted in genuine emotion for the characters. And I feel like that episode, which Damon and I wrote, was kind of just the right cocktail of those elements.
Who's your favorite character?
Sawyer. I mean, come on, like
is that everybody's favorite character?
No, I don't.
Or is it like
so.
The Beatles, where you have to because everybody likes Paul or John, people have to throw themselves into somebody else?
It's funny. Different writers, obviously kind of are interested in different characters. So, we have like Eddie and Adam, who are two of the sort of writer executive producers on the show. Their favorite character is Hurley, and they've written a lot of the best Hurley stuff on the show. So, I think different people embrace different characters, and there's a bit of a rotating thing. Like I loved writing Claire stuff this year. I mean, she was so cool as sort of this, kind of wackadoo, and with Squirrel Baby and having been, on the island for 3 years, kind of in this sort of crazed state. I mean, it was really fun to write Claire scenes. So it kind of varies over time, but I would say overall Sawyer.
Who is Damon's favorite character?
I would say for Damon, it's probably Jack. I think that he is, kind of think very dialed into Jack, and I think that the kind of complexities of that guy who sort of is a reluctant hero and sort of struggles with, kind of what his role should be, is I think something, I think just, Matthew's a really wonderful actor, and I think he likes really writing for Jack.
My favorite character was Sawyer.
Yeah.
My favorite just performance in general was Saeed Naveen Andrews.
Oh yeah.
I think I'm interested to see where his career goes, because just the subtle stuff he did this season, I thought was really cool.
And he's kind of the guy who acts the most. I mean, the actors and the characters kind of converge in television. And so if you hung out with Terry O'Quinn or Matthew or Josh, they're very much like who they are. But Naveen Andrews is a sort of a very, like, here he is, Saeed, the Republican guard, but often said he's like, "Oh, hello, darling. Oh, Bill, it's so lovely to meet you." He's, sort of British and very, sort of erudite and not at all sort of a dangerous torturer Republican guard dude.
It was the highest degree of difficulty because he had to be really scary. He had to feel really human. He had to change this year completely and kind of become creepy. There's the lights are on, but nobody's home, Saeed.
Yeah, kind of zombie Saeed.
Yeah, I just thought he was really good. It's embarrassing that he hasn't won an Emmy, but that goes back to my whole network versus cable stupid.
I know. He's really good.
And why'd you kill Simmons in an electromagnetic?
Oh yeah, I forgot to ask you about that.
Yeah.
I just, I thought you would appreciate the little red shirt kind of shout out in the show, for your fandom.
I loved it.
Well, the thing is that we're in the 6th season of the show. We haven't really introduced too many new characters. So there are very few choices. There's sort of, there's Dogen, the Japanese temple master. There's Zoe, the Tina Fey lookalike. So Simmons, there was very few kind of, that guy was actually, he didn't live long on the show, but he burned bright.
He totally burned bright. And it was such a win for me over Kimmel.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you. And I know he's upset about it.
He was upset about it. Yeah. That's true.
And he will remain upset about it for a while, but it's a nice win for me. That and the fact that he finally joined Twitter this year were the two biggest wins I've had in a long time, the Simmons-Kimmel rivalry. And
yet he's only got like 40,000 followers so far. Something. I don't know. It's actually probably climbing a lot every day.
It's a good start for him.
It's a good start for him.
It's a good start for him.
He took to it like a duck to water, though. I mean, he just started, tweeting like a madman.
I told him for a year, and no, I'm not doing that. Yeah. Who is the all-time biggest celebrity fan of Lost? The guy or girl who was almost like annoying. They were so over the top with badgering you about it.
I think, but not in an annoying way. I think Jimmy is kind of our biggest fan. I mean, we love him, and he has been so supportive of the show. But and I think it's awesome that we've actually gone on his show as guests. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, Damon and I are writers. We're not we're not actors. We're not pretty people. And he puts us on the couch and actually is like talks about Lost minutia, you know. And I'm thinking, gosh, did the people in the Kimmel audience really even know what's going on here?
Probably not. They're all tourists.
But it's awesome, and he's been so supportive, and he emails us after episodes, and he's just
there's nobody who's he's into the show at a level that I'm not, where you can remember the different episodes and
and he's got the whole thing in his brain. I mean, it's pretty awesome, and we've really loved getting having that sort of interaction with Jimmy about the show.
Who is the most improbable celebrity fan of Lost? The one that made you say, "Wow, really?"
Whoopi Goldberg? I don't know. She's apparently a big Lost fan.
That is a little strange.
Yeah, I'm like, but
nobody like Alex Rodriguez? Anybody like that? Of that ilk?
Yeah, I mean,
like Lamar Odom coming up to you at some party being like
Nate Robinson.
Nate Robinson. I mean, the greatest thing ever is you can actually go on his Twitter feed and read his he obviously watched the DVDs this year right before the playoffs, and so he wasn't playing. He probably watched them in a week.
So he was actually rolling through there, and he was making comments about his experience as he's watching through the seasons. It's actually really entertaining to read.
That's funny.
So you can go back on that.
At least he did one thing this year. I'm still a little bitter about it. It's the lack of Celtics performance. Maybe he'll play in the next round.
Oh man, well I'm just hoping the Celtics will beat Orlando.
Amazing. It's amazing. I never ever thought the Celtics would be playing longer than Lost. Thought for sure you guys are going to end after the Celtics season. Anyway, that's congratulations on everything. Good luck with the with Radio Silence after the season finale.
Well, thank you, Bill. It's great to
I would
talk
stay
to you.
out of the limelight.
Stay out of the limelight.
Let people dissect it for a couple of months, then come back and dramatically give some interview with Alan Sepinwall or something. It's a posting about your summer. But yeah, I'm excited. I couldn't be more excited for the ending. Thanks for all you guys did. And thanks for being in the BS Report.
Thanks, man.
Target % off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.